topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Pennsylvania. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show, where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. We're with you every week. I'm your host, Steve-O. We have, without a doubt, one of my favorite shows to do because it involves so many people. This is our workers' comp show, and I guess we're just so lucky to have one of the top workers' comp attorneys in the state of Pennsylvania. Let me introduce you to our expert, our longtime expert attorney, Michael Cardamone. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you today?
I got to tell you, I love doing your show because the type of law that you practice and the only type of law that you practice is workers' compensation law. And there's so many people who do not understand what you do because it is so important that people understand. And that's why we do a show like this, so people will understand. And there's a way to make the field a level playing field. And that's exactly what you do, Michael.
Yeah, I really enjoy the narrow focus that our firm has. It makes it very interesting. And each month, each week, each day, each year, you're peeling back another layer. You're getting so far deep into the nuances that you become really sort of specialized with the subject matter, because you're not handling personal injury case 1 hour and then a criminal defense matter. We're just workers' comp for injured workers, and that's it. And the firm has become very efficient in that regard. And you hear the term a well-oiled machine. We're sort of like that because we know how to handle everything from scratch. We know how to win a case. We know the judges. We know how to write the briefs. We know how to take the depositions. We know how to handle the clients to get them through a really tough time in their life. So it's a very rewarding area of the law.
Michael, tell people, because it's so surprising, as long as our show's been on, there's people who still do not know about what workers' compensation law is. Explain that to people about what your firm does and your background as well.
Sure. So workers' comp is a statewide law. Each state has their own statute for injured workers, not independent contractors, but employees who are injured at work. And it provides for lost wages. In Pennsylvania, it's usually 2/3 of the average weekly wage. Can be a little higher, can be lower, depends where you fall. Medical benefits, death benefits, and also specific loss benefits. Specific loss would be for an amputation of a finger or an arm or a leg, or certain disfigurement of the head, face, or neck. There's a certain amount of weeks you can get. So it's a great system that we have, but you got to fight for it, because on the other side, we have the insurance companies who want to pay out as little as they can on every case. So the insurance is there and available for employees when they're injured at work. On the other hand, they don't just turn over the benefits. You got to, unfortunately, lawyer up in most cases to get what you're entitled to. In terms of my background, I went to Villanova for law school, Boston College for undergrad. I'm local, grew up in North Wales, went to St. Joe's Prep, and started the firm in early 2014. And now we have attorney Paul Silver with us. So we have about 65 years of combined experience. Again, like Steven said, all we do is workers' comp. So we're kind of rare in that regard. Not too many firms across the state can say they're 100% focused on the representation of injured workers. So we take a lot of pride in that. And we try to make things as easy as possible for our clients. They're going through a really tough time. They're out of work, they're in pain. Sometimes it affects the marriage and the relationships with the kids. It's a really, it can be a grueling experience. On top of that, the legal stuff and the hearings and people's checks being laid and stuff like this. So we become counselors at law in a legal sense, but also sort of become psychologists in a way in a lot of our cases to try to keep our clients to hang in there during a really tough time.
First of all, I just want to tell Michael we so appreciate him taking out time out of his busy schedule to educate you, the viewers, the listeners. Here's your chance to find out before you've paid a lawyer what your rights are. And what amazes me, Michael, is you work on a contingency basis. That means until you've collected, there's no fee involved until you have actually done the work and won the case for them.
Exactly. Yeah. It really levels the playing field. It allows injured workers to get help without having to send us any money. And a lot of people will turn their head and not really believe me when I say that. And I sometimes have to repeat it and say, yes, don't send any money. We get a 20% of the wage loss benefits if we're successful. And our fee can only be awarded if there's a court order. You can only get a court order if you've won in court on a petition, which benefits the injured worker, or a settlement happens. So, yeah, the contingent fee playing field is fantastic because otherwise a lot of people would be, they would be railroaded. If it was a billable hour dynamic, the majority of people are living check to check and they wouldn't be able to get the attorney to get them the fair settlement. So it works out nicely in that regard.
Michael, how long is the average injured worker on workers' compensation?
That's a really good question and also tricky. I would say probably 6 to 9 months. You got to remember there are certain claims that are very small where they strain their back or their elbow or their shoulder and they're out of work for a month or two. There's other cases that are a lot more serious where people are on comp for years. So if you had to sort of, take an average, I would say 6 to 9 months would be somewhere in the right ballpark. It's easy it's not easy, I should say, to get on the comp. They've denied your claim in the beginning after you report the injury. It can take a while to get through litigation. In fact, it can take a year or more in some cases. Once you're on comp, it's a different situation, and it's much harder for the insurance companies to get you off. So because our litigation process takes so long, there's two dynamics. Getting on the comp is exhausting and very difficult, but once you're on it, it's tough for them to get you off of it. So, but anyway, the average would probably be in that 6 to 9 month type of time frame.
I'm going to share with everybody, which I've done on some of our prior shows before, how important it is to have an attorney. I had property stolen at the airport, luggage, and not knowing I was going to try to handle it myself, and it kept lingering on and lingering. Nothing was getting done. And someone probably said, you've got to hire an attorney before they take you seriously. And I got to tell you, things changed so much for me once I hired an attorney. Now they knew that the playing field was going to be level. I think it's so important when an injured worker that has an attorney representing them. I'm telling you, it makes a difference whether you doing it, not you, Michael, but a person who's been injured trying to handle the case themselves versus hiring an attorney to handle it for
Yeah,
you?
I agree, Steve. I think the facts and the studies show that injured workers will net about 2 to 3 times more with an attorney than without one. A lot of people have the idea, oh my God, I might have to pay 20%, but the idea is that you're going to net a lot more in the big picture with the attorney on your side. So, a lot of people, for example, if they have a petition to terminate claiming they're recovered, if we win, yeah, we might get our 20% of their workers' comp weekly check, but the alternative is losing and getting zero. So it's when you
Right.
juxtapose it and you say, okay, do you want a 20% hit? Which that's not fun, but it's a 20% hit, or do you want nothing? The math becomes very easy for people. They may not understand that in the beginning of the case because the adjuster is, nice and friendly and they're getting them to the doctors and small talking about the Eagles or the Phillies. But things can go south in a real hurry. As soon as they get the independent medical exam set up, that's when things tend to end up in court with the different doctors' opinions. So, yeah, having the lawyer is really important. And I tell people, listen, this is your earning power on the line. This is not a joke. Okay. This is really important. This could affect you for years, maybe even decades, depending on the nature of the injury. So do the right thing and get an attorney. It's just common sense.
Michael, can a workers' comp insurance company, can they just stop the work comp checks whenever they want?
No, there are a few exceptions, but it's not just because they want to. And that's a big fear our clients have is, can they just stop my check? They can't unless there's a court order, and a court order wouldn't come about unless there was litigation. So they would know about it, have the right to defend whatever the issue is. So in general, no, the checks are ongoing until they're stopped by a judge. There are a few exceptions. They send out LIBC reporting forms every 6 months or so, asking if you have any income, if you're working, has your condition changed, things like this. Some of the questions are pretty vague and tough to answer, but if someone doesn't return those within 30 days, the workers' comp carrier can unilaterally stop their checks until they're returned. Another example would be if somebody returned to work, workers' comp can then modify or suspend the wage loss checks depending on their earnings. And then we have the right to challenge that within a 21-day period if they go back out of work. But in general, the answer is no. They can't just say, you know what? I'm really annoyed at Mike Cardamone. He's getting checks for 6 months now, and I'm going to just stop his checks. They can't do that. And that's, a big fear that people have because like anybody, they have bills to pay and they want to know that this is going to be a certainty, until a judge decides, a certain issue in court.
What percent of your worker comp cases end up in court, Michael?
Oh, that's tricky. I would say 50%. I would say now technically they all end up in court. The reason is in Pennsylvania, if you reach a settlement, you have to have a hearing to approve it. So technically they all end up in court if they result in a settlement. But short of that, I would say it's 50-50. Some people, the adjuster's very aggressive and we're doing petition after petition, claiming a recovery or some kind of an earning power. We're fighting over medical evidence, what treatment might be reasonable or necessary. In other cases, the adjuster's not real, maybe on top of the file, and they let things coast. So probably 50% or more end up in court, though, at some point or another.
And the main reason why they end up in court?
The main reason would be two different doctors' opinions. You have the treating doctor, which somebody is normally considered a treating doctor after the first 90 days from the date of injury. They might say an injured worker can't work at all, or they need a lot of restrictions. They can't lift more than 10 pounds, push or pull 10 pounds, etc. And then the independent medical doctor who can come in every 6 months, not for treatment, but just to examine the injured worker, they might say, oh, I think they're recovered from the accepted injury. They had a sprain. Now I think their symptoms are related to degenerative arthritis, so they're recovered. Or if they're not recovered, I think they can work, but without as many restrictions as the treating doctor. So once you have these two different opinions from the treating doctor and the insurance company doctor, that's usually where you go into court. A lot of people want to blame the lawyers for being litigious. That's a popular sort of thing to say, but the reality is that the court, at least in workers' comp, is driven by the doctors and the different opinions they might have about someone's disability.
And wow, that could definitely that can definitely be a situation. Michael, tell everybody where they can reach you at.
Absolutely. So 215-206-9068. That's our telephone number. Online, we're at www.cardamonelaw.com. So that's CARDAMONE, Cardamone Law, LAW.com. And we have our website was revised in the last few months, so it's looking very sharp. So head over there, and there's also a lot of information on the website, especially under the blog button if people or injured workers want to learn about workers' comp stuff.
Nice.
Hey, I am back. So see, this is what happens to live show. Like to tape the show. We don't. We like to have it live, and sometimes we have technical difficulties. Michael, I think once somebody signs with you, they no longer have to talk to the insurance company. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we kind of take that burden off of them. Once they retain our firm, the adjuster or the claims rep, they're not able to contact the injured worker on the phone anymore. They can still write to them, and they would have to carbon copy us. But yeah, they're not going to be pestering them anymore. And did you go to your doctor's appointment? And what did the doctor say? And you have your restriction note? And they can be very feisty and obnoxious. So that's another benefit. Once they retain us, they'll not only make more money in the vast majority of cases, but they'll have less of the headaches and the daily annoyances like that.
And they could end up saying the wrong thing if they're handling it themselves.
Yeah, they might say something like, oh, sorry, I missed your call. I was out walking the dog, right? And then maybe they have an arm injury or a hand injury. And they say, oh, my hand's killing me. The dog was really pulling on the leash. Well, the adjuster might think, oh, wait a minute. That sounds like an intervening trauma. Maybe we can now pin the work-related injury and the symptoms and disability on an aggravation from walking the dog versus the original injury. Meanwhile, the person meant that, their symptoms were just flaring up because of that tension. It didn't cause a new injury. So these are the kind of things, though, that people, unwittingly might state on the phone to an adjuster where they get themselves in trouble, even though they're being honest and, legally it's not going to be really considered a new injury. But the adjuster might start getting ideas about how to talk to this person and get more information.
I've watched too many movies, but what are the chances that I'm being spied on by workers' comp, and at what stage of a case is it common to be spied on?
I would say, and first of all, really two different types of surveillance. One, the old-fashioned, just following you around in the car with the tinted windows. I don't get as many of those videos anymore. Now, we also educate our clients to be on the lookout for those things. And they always say, I have nothing to hide. And I say, I know you have nothing to hide, but you still don't want to be put on defense where, you're giving them some kind of ammunition and, then you have to defend yourself. But so they have the old fashioned videos where they're spying on someone and following them around to their gym or to the grocery store to see what they're carrying, things like this. And then you have the social media surveillance, which is, going through people's Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and finding out if they're active and stuff like that. So it's hard to put a percentage on it. I'd probably say 20 to 30% of the time they're spending money to investigate these things. But at least in terms of my client base and clientele, we don't come into that, we don't see a lot of the investigations because they won't turn it over really unless there's something damaging in there, at least from their perspective. So, but it definitely happens. And I would say once they get a doctor to claim a recovery on their end, that's probably an opportune time for them to get the surveillance because they can sort of bolster their argument, say, not only, Judge, do we have an independent medical examiner saying the injured worker is recovered, but look at this. We have a video of them getting in and out of their car and driving, and they're not using any crutches, and they seem to be fine. So I think when there's litigation just starting or in the about to be started, there's probably more surveillance going on to see if they can pad their case a little bit with extra evidence.
Michael, as the experts, we pride ourselves on truly educating the people, not sounding like one big commercial. But I always like asking you so people will understand, now, why should I, if I'm injured on the job, why should I hire your firm?
Some of this will sound like we already went over it, but one is you're probably going to lose money and potentially a lot of money if you don't hire us. The second thing is all we do is comp. We're very rare. There are a handful of other firms that just do comp for injured workers, but not many. I'm a certified specialist, which is it's probably about 100 across Pennsylvania who represent injured workers who took this very rigorous test and passed it to be deemed a certified specialist. And the other thing is I would say our experience. I've been doing this 25 years, pretty much exclusively the whole time. Paul Silver works with our firm. He's been doing it over 40 years. And we work together on every case as a team. And that's unusual. Most firms won't do that. They'll sign a case to an attorney, another one to a different attorney. We put our minds together on comp and our comp experience on every case. And so we're really strategizing all the time to position our cases, for a victory or a fair settlement. So I think they're the big reasons why, we would stand out for an injured worker.
Michael, give everybody your phone number and your website address.
Sure. Phone number is 215-206-9068. 215-206-9068. And online it's cardamonelaw.com. So CARDAMONE, cardamonelaw.com.
And if you've missed any of the show, or if you want to turn on a friend or relative who've been injured, they can go to iHeart or they can go to YouTube under Ask the Experts, find today's show. And Michael, we're so blessed to have you. And you've been with us a long time. And just the way you present yourself, your knowledge we're just very lucky to have you. Thank you so much. Michael will be back with us again next month. He's always with us the last Wednesday of each month. So he'll be back again with us. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you so much.
That's attorney Michael Cardamone, workers' compensation attorney. We have our next show is so important. It's our show on Medicare. And I understand Medicare. I'm on Medicare. And it's so great that we have two ladies that are so knowledgeable on Medicare that if you're getting ready to go into Medicare or if you're on Medicare, this is such a great show. They're called the Medicare Gals. let me see if we have them online yet. I think we only have one of the ladies today with us. Are they there, Rebel? We're waiting on one of our. There are two ladies that are partners together for Medicare. They're called the Medicare Gals, and it is so important that you understand about Medicare because I didn't, and we're only going to have Sharon with us today. Let's bring Sharon on.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Sharon. You know what, Sharon? I love doing this show with you because I'm so involved with Medicare and you are so knowledgeable. You and Lynn both are so knowledgeable. And I am the best example of why you should understand Medicare because I didn't. And I know I'm not the only one out there, Sharon. And it really costs me because I didn't know. And that's why we do a show like we do today. Sharon, tell people about your background.
So I am on Medicare. So I know how it works, at least for me. And what people tell me, I've been in the financial services industry. So if I'm on Medicare, you know I'm old. And I've been in the financial services industry, oh gosh, 25, 30 years, and been probably doing Medicare for about 20 years. I have a financial planning background, but now my practice concentrates solely on insurance type things. Lynn and I formed kind of a partnership to help promote and help people with Medicare, but we do have our own private practices with our own special niches, which I'm going to get into in a little bit.
Sure. Also, we're going to be talking Medicare, but tell everybody the different areas of insurance you do cover.
Well, so today, Steve, I'm going to sidestep Medicare a little bit, and I'm going to be talking about long-term care insurance.
Nice.
Okay. That is, yes, and it does go hand in hand with Medicare. So people need to know how it works with Medicare. But my specialties are long-term care insurance, Medicare. I help people with health insurance. It really comes into play when someone's going on Medicare and they're married and their spouse is not 65 yet. If you're not 65, you can't go on Medicare. So people will go, well, what's going to happen to my husband, my wife? So I help them. We call it the under 65 crowd. I help them get health insurance. So anything in the health life insurance area, help people get cancer insurance. There's a lot of little niches. So if you feel you have a need in the insurance world, besides property and casualty, besides helping with your house, I can help you.
I think talking about long-term care, Sharon, is so important. It's such an area that people do not understand.
Right. So there have been a lot of changes in the long-term care arena. So let's talk long-term care. People ask me, what is long-term care? Well, it's anytime you need help that's non-medical. So an instance may be you've been in the hospital and you're coming out and they tell you, okay, you need rehab. Well, that's a form of care. It's kind of short-term care, not long-term care. Kind of the definition between the two is if you need, quote, long-term care, that means you're going to need care for 90 days or more. Maybe you've had a stroke and you're going to need help. Versus if you have a hip replacement, you may need help in the house, but it may only be for 60 days. That's not considered long-term care. The big problem these days is people don't think about it. Like you said, they think that Medicare or their health insurance is going to pay for it. And sometimes it helps with it. So there is a crossover. So depending on, let's talk about Medicare and if you're on an Advantage plan. So Steve, listen up, okay? Because I know you're on an Advantage plan.
Yes.
So this
Yes.
is one of the, we kind of keep it real here. This is one of the biggest complaints with Advantage plans is when you have been in the hospital and now they need you to go to quote unquote rehab, which is usually a facility, which is usually a nursing home with a rehab part to it. Okay. You think, well, that's easy. Well, I get complaints about this that sometimes the insurance company on the Advantage plan doesn't approve it. Now, what do we do? I had an instance,
Wow.
right? So don't just think because the hospital says you need rehab, that insurance company is going to pay for it. Okay. So I had an instance last December where a lady broke her leg, was in the hospital. She was on an Advantage plan. And she told me, they're not approving me going to rehab. They're not approving me going to rehab. And I couldn't quite understand that. But what it turned out, you have to remember that the insurance companies are in the business to manage your care without being wasteful. So the hospital was referring her to a rehab that was like, you needed much more care than what she really needed. And once they flipped it to another rehab that really was the right one for her care, then it got approved. Okay. The other thing I will tell you is, and this happens with Medicare too, is they try and kick you out sooner than you think you should be going out. I hear that all the time. Right. I've been in for 5 days. They're telling me we have to get out. They're not going to pay. My mom doesn't need to get out. So that is trying to, cost contain. Medicare will do that too. There are some stipulations for Medicare. If you're on Medicare with a Medicare supplement, you had to have been in the hospital first for it to pay for any care. So there is some policies that you can get that can help with long-term care, but it will also semi-help with the short term. So let's say you go into rehab and you're in 5 days and they want you out and you don't think you're ready. Well, your policy can kick in and then pay for the rest of the days that you feel you need to be in there. Otherwise, you can write a check to be in there. That's more short-term care. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when you really need long-term care, 90 days or more, let's go worst case, you have a stroke, okay? And you need to go into a facility. If you do not have some sort of long-term care insurance, some sort of policy to help pay for that, you are going to pay for that yourself. And let me tell you, the cost of facilities, yes, the cost of facilities, we're lucky in Dallas. We're in DFW. We are lucky, but it's a good $6,000 a month, probably where you are,
Wow.
Steve, it might be $10,000 a month per
Probably.
person. I mean, so this is something that people really need to be aware of. Medicare might pay the first 20 days. They may pay part of it, but if you are going to need care for a while, you are on the hook for that cost.
Where does home care come in at? Is that considered long-term?
Yes, it is. So, and I will tell you this, many people don't realize this. People want to stay at home. They don't necessarily want to go into a facility.
Yes.
And
right.
When people think about long-term care, they think nursing home. Well, true. But these days, when you get to a nursing home, you're kind of at the tail end. You need a lot of care. Your insurance companies that sell long-term care insurance will tell you about 80%, 70-80% of the claims are home health care. And what's happened is since COVID, home health care has become very expensive. Maybe $25 to $40 an hour. So many
Wow.
times, if you need 24-hour care, it is cheaper to go into a facility. And people really saw that when they got COVID and they needed people to come in. But you can buy insurance policies that will help pay for that. Either pay the whole thing or partially pay, depending what you want.
Where
So
does Sharon? Where does I don't know what they call them in Texas now, but the um, long term, where you stay in you move into a facility and stay there. Is that long term care also?
yes, yes, yes.
Assi-
So
Assisted living.
assisted living, long-term, yeah, assisted living, nursing homes. So you can't just
Yes,
walk
nursing.
into a nursing home and say, I want to stay there. You have to have, you
Okay.
have to have certain things wrong with you. You maybe can't walk. You need help with medications. You need help bathing, that type of thing. So the big thing, Steve,
Okay.
the thing I haven't even touched on is the cognitive. The facilities many times need, when someone gets Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's is probably the biggest issue you need to protect yourself from. Besides Alzheimer's or cognitive issues, your long-term care situation usually most of the time is less than 5 years. 3 to 5 years is when you need care. And but Alzheimer's can go as long as, say, 8 years where you need a facility. And what happens is many people, when they get Alzheimer's, their spouse wants to take care of them, and they can. I know my uncle got Alzheimer's, and my aunt took care of him at home for 17 years, 17 years. But it
Wow.
can be difficult. It can be very stressful on the caregiver. And it gets to a point in time where they know they need to go to facility. So that would be an instance of, because once you have Alzheimer's, you're not going to get better. Medicare pays
Right.
for things if you're
Exactly.
getting better. If you're not getting better and you just need what we call custodial, not medical necessarily, because when you have Alzheimer's, you don't necessarily need medical, but you need someone to help you, tell you how to put on your clothes, make sure that you don't leave the house, just taking care of you.
People don't think about this, do they? They until it's like time to say you have to go into assisted living.
Right,
They don't
right.
pre they don't pre-plan this at all. So what
And
kind of
that's the problem.
insurance do you need? Yes. So what
So
kind of insurance do people need for long-term
there are
care?
so many ways to skin the cat. There are so many options. Most of the people are afraid to talk about long-term care insurance, just as what we call a standalone plan that just pays for facility home care because it's too expensive. But I'm going to tell you, there's so many options available to you out there. When you talk to me or Lynn, if you talk to me or Lynn, we can give you the options that you can afford. Now, will it pay for everything? No, but something's better than nothing. And the
Right.
other thing, Steve, what people need to realize is if you wanted to go in and buy a long-term care insurance policy, just a straight policy, they're going to ask medical questions. So you can't just raise your hand and say, I need it. They're going to look at medications. They're going to look at your medical history. If you have Parkinson's, for instance, no way are you getting it. It's too late. You want to get it before the medical issues happen. And they've now come out with these short-term, what we call short-term extended plans that maybe only go for a year, but it helps you in that first year. You can get easier, what we call underwriting, medical questions. They are cheaper. You can even buy an annuity. For instance, let's say you buy an annuity and you have 100,000 in that annuity. Well, if it's a certain type of annuity, it may give you 3 times that amount for long-term care. It may give you 300,000. They have life insurance policies that have a long-term care component to it. So there's a whole array of different things that you can do. Or you can go on Medicaid. Medicaid is another option, but you have to spend down all your money. It's really for the impoverished. It's really not meant for the average person to go on. But what I tell people is, even if you don't get a policy, even if you don't cover yourself, at least go through that exercise and know. Because a lot of people will say, well, my daughter, my husband is going to take care of me. I don't need that. And that's fine. And I'm sure they think they want to until they get into the throes of it, especially the men. But if you've got a 130-pound woman, she's not going to be able to lift you. She's not going to be able to help you get you, to the shower to bathe. Your kids may be caught up in, they have their own families, their own lives. I will say that's the biggest thing people say to me is, I don't want to be a burden to my children, because they've seen it with their own parents, Yeah, they've seen it with their own parents. So it is discussion that needs to be had. It is discussion that should be had with when you do Medicare. Our average age, though, of someone buying a policy these days is 57. 57. So that's prior to Medicare.
Yes.
The conversation needs to be had.
I have to ask this because someone who watches your show, loves the show, said he wanted to know, what do you prefer, HMO or PPO? And I wanted to ask you, as soon as I got the question,
Okay.
I know there's a lot of things to go into that.
Right. I mean, I'm a PPO girl. Okay. So I like PPO because it gives you the flexibility. The big difference many times, although it's changing, is a PPO, you don't need referrals to go to a specialist. An HMO, many times you do. Although here in the DFW area, there are multiple HMO carriers that no longer require a referral. HMO, you have a set network that you have to stay in. PPO, you can go out of network. You're going to pay more money for the care, but you can go out of network. But the disadvantage of the PPO is your max out of pocket, your maximum out of pocket for your plan is always higher. If you go HMO, it's lower because it's a little bit more constrained. So I tend to lean towards the PPOs, but I'm not saying HMO is not the way to go. It really depends on the person, but I like PPOs.
I'm on HMO, and I got to tell you, I have loved the plan. I've loved the doctors who they refer me to. I've had surgery, so I've had surgeons, and I got to tell you, I love Medicare, period.
Steve, that brings up a point, because where you're located in Florida, a lot of the doctors' facilities tend to be part of the HMOs. Here in Dallas, Fort Worth, I have seen where a doctor will take the XYZ, say the United Care PPO, but they won't take the HMO. So you do have to be careful. If a doctor's office says, hey, I take Humana, let's say, you got to make sure they'll take that HMO as well as the PPO. They always take, if they take it, they'll always take the PPO, but not necessarily the HMO,
Yeah, I got to tell you, I looked at the doctors on the plan, and I wanted to make sure my orthopedic doctor, because I loved him, was on there, and it showed he was on there. But my doctor who refers me, they're not in their group, even though they showed on Humana's group, they have groups within inside groups, and I didn't know that.
Well, and also, this is really bad. The doctor can drop out of the network anytime throughout the year. So you could
Ooh.
start, I know. So you could start on an Advantage plan and your doctor is in, your specialist, and you think it's great. And then the next time you go, they go, well, we're not part of that plan. You're going to have to write us a check. And there's nothing you can do. You can't change plans in the middle of the year for most of the time. You only can change during the annual enrollment in the fall. So this has become an issue with people. I don't know if you knew that.
I got to, no, I didn't know that. See, there is so much to learn about all this. That's why we have a show like this. And I'm so glad that we can, in fact, I would love to do another show on long-term care because there's so much that people just do not know at all.
Right. One thing I want to say is people usually think that it's too expensive, but I can design, Lynn or I can design a plan. It can be as low as $100 a month. So, and it can go all over. It's like buying a car. It can go all over the place. It behooves someone to at least look at it to see if it is affordable, because it is an expense that will kill you once you need it. Or you're going to spend all your money on it and then you're going to end up going into Medicaid. And the Medicaid beds and facilities are different. They may have 3 people in a room. They may have 4 people in a room. You don't have the flexibility like you do if you have. And some facilities won't even take you if you can't, what we call private pay, if you can't write a check for it, or you don't have an insurance policy. They don't even let you in the door. They don't have Medicaid.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's
Tell
an
people
it's
how
an
they can
important
reach you,
topic.
Sharon. Absolutely. And tell people how they can reach you.
So you can reach me, on the long-term care site. You can always go to yourmedicaregals.com website, or I have my own website that talks about long-term care. It's called ltcplanningconsultants.com. I know it's long. ltcplanningconsultants.com, where it's got tons of information about long-term care, gives you an estimate what it's going to cost in your area. The phone number is 972-596-1318. And you can call me,
You can tell by the show.
Email me. Email also is Sharon@ltcplanningconsultants.com. That's another way to get a hold of me for the long-term care.
You can tell by the show that Sharon knows how to break this all down. And trust me, you need almost like a teacher with this. And
Yeah.
Sharon and Lynn are both so good at this. They're both with you every month. We'll be back again next month with more Ask the Experts. Sharon, thank you so much. Tell Lynn hello for us.
Okay, I will.
And that is Sharon Luker, Medicare Gals. That's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.